All right. Good afternoon, everyone. We will be beginning this today's live info session about the ITIN taxes and child tax credits in just a couple of minutes. If you're watching live, thank you for your patience. If you're watching a recording, feel free to skip this part. We will be beginning the presentation in just a minute. Thank you for being here. Please excuse my congestion. It's allergy season and it's been a tough one. And I normally do these presentations in Spanish, but this information is so important that we got to get it out in multiple languages. So I will begin my presentation in just a moment. All right. I'm gonna put you over here. And we are going to share our screen and begin talking about ITINs, taxes, and credits. So make sure the screen is being shared. So today's presentation is regarding ITINs, taxes, child tax credits, and stimulus payments. This presentation is brought to you thanks to SEBA. We are a community-based organization in Philadelphia. PA is Ready, a statewide network of immigrant-serving organizations, and the City of Philadelphia's Office of Community Empowerment and Opportunity, also known as the CEO. So we're going to be talking about several important matters: ITINs, taxes, tax returns, child tax credits, and stimulus payments. This live info session is part of a series. We're doing Spanish every Monday and English every Wednesday at 6. So do check it out. Si están esperando una sesión informativa en español, tenemos una grabación de esta misma presentación, pero en español, que se hizo el lunes pasado. Pueden checarlo por ahí. Estamos haciendo la misma sesión todos los lunes en español y todos los miércoles en inglés. So, vamos a hablar sobre, let's talk about ITINs and taxes. So what is an ITIN? What is the point of an ITIN? An ITIN is important for a number of reasons. Number one, it can be important for any immigration process to have an up-to-date tax record. It shows proof of income, continuous presence in the United States, good moral character, that you're working, paying taxes, and family unity. If you've had taxes withheld from your job, you could get some of that refunded, depending on how much and your family situation. If you live with your children, you may be eligible for the child tax credit, which may represent a considerable refund. You will also need an up-to-date tax record to apply for FAFSA, that's Federal Student Aid for University, SNAP or food stamps, health insurance for your children, etc. Any form of public benefit, you've got to show proof of income, and your annual tax return is your best proof of income. If you don't have a social security number, you need to get an ITIN. And SEBA can help with both applying for an ITIN and filing your tax return for free. SEBA will never ever charge you for any service. It may be possible that you may have to owe money to the federal government, but not to SEBA. A couple of things to note, and you're going to hear me repeat this throughout the presentation. ITINs take a long time to process. If you hear anybody saying, oh, I can get you an ITIN in 2 weeks, just give me $500, call the police. ITINs are not easy. They take a long time to process. Number two, an ITIN is not an immigration status or work authorization, but it does give us access to important financial resources. With an ITIN, you can open a bank account. With an ITIN in the state of New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland, you can get a driver's license, not yet in Pennsylvania. With an ITIN and an up-to-date tax record, you can obtain a business license in Pennsylvania. You can even obtain a loan to purchase a home or to open a small business here in Pennsylvania. So it's not an immigration status, it's not work authorization, but it does give us access to important financial resources. So let's break it down. An ITIN, ITIN stands for Individual Taxpayer Identification Number. So what is it? It's exactly what it says. It's an identification number to pay taxes for the individual taxpayer. That's the individual taxpayer is you and me. It's an identification number to pay taxes, and it's a 9-digit number that begins with the number 9. For example, on screen, as you see, 912345678. This is similar to a social security number, except social security numbers never start with the number 9, and that's the difference. So that's what an ITIN is. What is it not? This is important for everyone to understand. An ITIN is not a social security number. It is not immigration status, and it is not work authorization. It is only an identification number so that you can pay taxes. All right, so ITINs, how do I get one? Number one, you have to file a tax return for the most recent year. If you've never filed a tax return before, tax return is where you tell the federal government, this is who I am and my family situation, this is how much money I earn, and this is how much I'm supposed to pay in taxes and whether or not you paid that amount. So to apply for an ITIN, you must file a tax return for the most recent year. You must also have a current passport. Passport is the most important document to obtain an ITIN. If you do not have a passport, we can use a combination of other documents, but it's much, much, much easier to use a passport, and I'll explain why in a moment. Another thing to note, if all of your income was in cash, a lot of people who are applying for an ITIN for the first time are usually paid in cash. They're paid under the table. It is very likely, depending on your family situation, that you may have to pay money to the IRS, the Internal Revenue Services. Since you have not paid your taxes on your income during the year, you may have to pay them all when you file for an ITIN application. Another thing, as I've said already, you must wait 6 to 11 weeks. The ITIN application takes a long time to process. It is not quick, it is not easy. It takes 6 to 11 weeks, usually more than that. So if you were to file your own application, you at home, you could file your own application. You would have to mail your actual original passport to the IRS. However, SEBA is a certifying acceptance agent, which means that we can mail a copy of your passport and a certification certifying that we looked at your passport and see that it is legitimate. We cannot do this for other documents. So if you don't have a passport, the other documents that we can use, which is mostly a birth certificate and another form of photo ID, we have to mail the original ones to the IRS and wait for them to send them back. So that's why I always say it's better, much, much better to have the passport. Please note that a notary may not certify copies of your passport for ITIN purposes. A certified copy certified by a notary is worthless for ITIN purposes. Do not fall prey to schemes from notaries that say, oh, yeah, I'll send a certified copy. Do not fall for that. You need to get a copy from a certifying acceptance agent. A notary may not certify copies of your passport for ITIN purposes. All right, moving on. So we've talked about applying for an ITIN, and remember, the first thing I said is you have to file a tax return. So what should you know about a tax return if you've never filed a tax return before? Number one, if your job pays you in cash, so if you're working somewhere and they're paying you in cash at the end of the day or at the end of the week, it is very likely that you will owe to the IRS. That is because you've been earning income during the year and you haven't been paying the taxes during the year. If, on the other hand, you are paid by check, you have some of your income withheld every week, so they take a little bit out of your paycheck every week, your job will issue you a form W-2, which says how much you earn and how much you paid in taxes. That means it is less likely that you will owe money. It all comes down to your individual situation. Sometimes a person with cash income may not owe anything, and sometimes a person who has a W-2 may owe something. Excuse me for a moment. Thank you. It's been a very difficult allergy season so far. Other things to know about your ITIN application or your tax return, sorry, it is important to include your entire family in your tax return, even if they had no income. This is a common misconception where maybe dad is working, mom stays at home and looks after the kids. Dad thinks that it's a problem for him to have mom on his tax return. On the contrary, married couples filing jointly, even if there was only one source of income, pay the lowest amount in taxes. So it is important to include your entire family. Not only do you pay the least amount of taxes if you include your whole family, but you also get to use your tax return with your entire family included in it as proof of family unity later on during an immigration process. So it is important to include your entire family, even if they had no income. It is also important to report all of your income, even if it means you have to pay more. Like I said, if you're paid in cash, it is likely you will have to pay to the IRS. You must report your own cash income. It is important to report all of your income, even if it means you have to pay more. It is never, ever, ever a good idea to hide information from the IRS. They will find out if you report that you only earned $5,000, and the IRS later on learns that you did not, in fact, only earn $5,000, that you actually earned $10,000. You will have to pay the taxes that you didn't pay on the income that you didn't report, as well as heavy penalties and fees. So it is never a good idea to hide information from the IRS. Furthermore, later on, when you go to try to get a loan to purchase a home or to get a loan to start a small business, you will need to show proof of income. Your proof of income will say that you only earned $5,000. The bank is not going to loan you a lot of money. So it is important to report all of your income, even if it means paying more. You must report all of your income. Another important thing to know, the IRS will never, ever, ever share your personal information with immigration or other law enforcement agencies. Now, this is not because the IRS is very generous or considerate of the challenges that immigrants face in this country. The IRS does not report any individual taxpayers' information to immigration or other law enforcement agencies because they know that if they did, people would stop reporting their income and would stop paying their taxes out of fear. So out of their own convenience, out of the fulfillment of their own task, they have a policy that they will never share your personal information with immigration or other law enforcement agencies. So your information is safe in that sense. So I'm going to go over these again because these are very important. If you get paid in cash, you probably owe money to the IRS, depending on your specific situation. If you're paid with a check, you need Form W-2, which your job should give you. You must include your entire household, your entire family on your tax return, even if they had no income. You must report all of your income to the IRS. It is never a good idea to hide information from the IRS, and the IRS will never share your personal information with immigration or other law enforcement agencies. Let's see if there's any questions on Facebook for us. If you do have any questions, please put them in the comment section. If you're watching this on a recording, please go ahead and comment your questions or send us a message on Facebook. We will try to answer your questions as quickly as possible. All right, I don't see any questions, so we're going to move on. So let's talk about a few important and hot topics these days. Number one is the economic impact payments, also known as stimulus payments. This is money that the federal government has set aside to assist families through the economic crisis brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic. So there's been 3 rounds of stimulus payments. The first 2 rounds corresponded to tax year 2020. They were for $1,200 per adult and $500 per child with a social security number. And round 2 was for $600 for every person with a social security number. Those were for 2020. Round 3 is for 2021, and it is $1,400 per person with a social security number. For certain mixed status families, that is families where maybe mom has an ITIN, dad has a social, one of the kids has an ITIN, one of the kids has a social. So mixed status families, certain family members with a social security number may be eligible even if their relatives have ITINs. If you are eligible and have not yet received your stimulus payments, you should file your 2020 and 2021 taxes now, today, so you can get the money that is rightfully yours. Now let's talk about who is eligible. So this is for rounds 1 and 2. So remember, these were for tax year 2020. So you would need to file a 2020 tax return to claim these. We have two fairly typical families here, mom and dad and a son. On the left-hand side, we have mom with an ITIN, dad with a social security number, and son with a social security number. In this case, there's one parent with a social. This family is eligible for all of the rounds 1 and 2 payments for the dad and for the son. So for everyone with a social security number. On the right-hand side, we have mom with an ITIN, dad with an ITIN, and the son with a social security number. Unfortunately, because neither parent has a social security number, even though the son has one, this family is ineligible for rounds 1 and 2. So for rounds 1 and 2, there has to be at least one parent with a social, and everyone who has a social can get rounds 1 and 2, if there is at least one parent with a social. If both parents have ITINs, unfortunately, their entire family is ineligible for rounds 1 and 2 of stimulus payments. But the rules are different for round 3. Now remember, round 3 corresponds to tax year 2021. So you would need to file a 2021 tax return to claim this payment. You have the same two families, mom, dad, and son. On the left-hand side, you have mom with an ITIN, dad with a social, and son with a social. Just like in round 1, they are eligible for round 3 for dad and for the son. On the right-hand side, you have mom and dad with ITINs and the son with a social. They were ineligible for rounds 1 and 2, but the son is eligible for round 3. So the rules were a little different for round 3. So again, if you have not received these payments and you were eligible for these payments, file a tax return as soon as you can for whichever year you need to claim, or both. File a tax return as soon as you can. Now on to another important matter of payments that may be due to you, the child tax credit. The child tax credit is a tax credit you receive for having children on your children with social security numbers on your tax return. It exists every year. Every year there has been a child tax credit, and it normally has a maximum value of $2,000 per child. For 2021, so as a special change, the federal government increased the maximum value of the credit to $3,600. Eligible families should have received the first $1,600 in monthly payments between July and December, and the remaining part of the credit would be part of your regular tax return. If you did not receive the advance payments, for whatever reason, you haven't applied for an ITIN yet, or you just didn't get the payments, you can claim the full value of the credit by filing a 2021 tax return. However, there is a very serious time crunch for families who are applying, where the parents are applying for ITINs. You must get your application in before the tax deadline, which is April 18th, in order to be eligible for the child tax credit. If your application is not submitted before April 18th, even though you meet all of the requirements, your children have social security numbers, your family will not be eligible for this expanded child tax credit. They will still be eligible for next year's, but it won't be as valuable as it is this year. So you must get your applications in before the tax deadline, which is only about 12 days away. So please reach out to us if you need to apply for an ITIN. Time is of the essence. Some common questions about the child tax credit. Number 1, I have an ITIN. Am I eligible? I'm telling you right now that the parent status is not important for the child tax credit. The only thing that matters is whether or not the child has a social security number. That is notwithstanding the deadline that I've just described. You must get your application in. You must get your ITIN application in before April 18th in order for your family to be eligible for the child tax credit. Another question. How can I get the advance payments? The advance payments are over. They were supposed to happen between July and December of 2021. There are no more advance payments. To receive whatever is missing, whether you got none of the payments, you got some but not all, or whatever is missing, you must file a 2021 tax return as soon as possible. And like I said, if you're applying for an ITIN, it's even more important to get it in as soon as possible. Another question, a lot of families couldn't work during 2020 or 2021 because of the pandemic, because they were staying at home looking after their children who couldn't go to school. Maybe it wasn't safe to go back to work, et cetera, et cetera. Excuse me for a second. Boy, I'm really struggling with allergies this evening. If you had no income in 2020 or 2021, you can file what is called a simplified tax return for the purposes, only for the purposes of claiming the stimulus and the child tax credit. However, it is important, as I said before, to report all of your income and the truth to the IRS, even if it is inconvenient, even if it means you have to pay more or receive less in child tax credit because you haven't paid taxes on some cash income. It is important to report the truth to the IRS. If indeed you had zero income, you earned $0 last year in 2020 or in 2021, we can file a simplified tax return to claim the child tax credit and the stimulus payments that your family may be eligible for. If you earned $1 to the IRS, you must report it to the IRS and pay taxes on that $1. But if indeed you received no income in 2020 or 2021, we can file a simplified tax return to claim the child tax credit and the stimulus payments that your family is eligible for. So let's talk about who is eligible for the child tax credit. We have three very similar families to the ones we described before: mom and dad and son. On the top left side, you have mom with an ITIN, dad with a social, and son with a social. This family is eligible because, remember, the parent status does not matter. What matters is that the son has a social security number. On the right side, you have mom with an ITIN, dad with an ITIN, and the son with a social. Again, the parent status does not matter. What matters is that the son has a social security number. On the bottom, you have mom with a social, dad with a social, but the son has an ITIN. Even though both parents have socials, this family is ineligible for the advance payments or the expanded child tax credit because the son has an ITIN. So what matters is whether or not the children have a social security number. Again, every child with a social security number makes his or her family eligible for the expanded child tax credit. Doesn't matter what the parent status is. But as I've said already, if you need to apply for an ITIN for the first time, you must get that application in before the tax deadline, which is April 18th, or you will not be eligible for the child, for your family will not be eligible for the child tax credit. So you must get those applications in as early as possible. All right, let's see if there's any questions about the child tax credit or the stimulus payments. Anything in the chat, in the Facebook comments? Doesn't seem that way. All right. So a few common questions about the ITIN, circling back to it. Can I use my ITIN to work? The official answer is no. An ITIN, as I've said already, is not work authorization. It is not immigration status. It is not a social security number. A very common thing that happens is when a person with an ITIN starts a new job, they fill out a form to calculate what their withholdings are going to be, and they are asked for a social security number, and they don't have one. Sometimes what will happen is either the worker themselves or the employer sometimes will fill out another number on the line where they're supposed to put a social security number. They'll put another series of 9 digits. This is technically an incorrect practice. This is technically something that should not be done. This is against the rules. However, the IRS is aware that this is a very common practice Millions of people do this every year, and ultimately they don't care. Again, not because they are very considerate and generous of the difficult situation that immigrants find themselves in, but because they want the workers and the employers to pay their taxes correctly. So they will let that slide. But technically, it is an incorrect thing to do. It is not something that is according to the rule, but it is a very, very common practice. Will the IRS share my information with immigration authorities? As I've said before, the answer is no. The IRS will not share any taxpayers' information with immigration or any other law enforcement agency, unless under extreme circumstances, such as instances of terrorism. Again, this is not because the IRS is very sympathetic to the plight of immigrants. This is because the IRS wants people to report their income and pay their taxes. And they know that if they reported people to immigration authorities, people would stop filing their tax returns and paying their taxes on time. Another question, can I apply for an ITIN for my family members? Yes. If they live with you in the United States, and they don't have a social security number, they can apply for an ITIN. If they are under the age of 18, they must present academic records or medical records. The IRS is very particular and specific about what kind of information is in those records, but we can help you prepare that application without a problem. If your family members live in Mexico or Canada and they depend on you, if you send money back to your family and that is the primary source of income for your family, you can claim them as dependents on your tax return. You can apply for an ITIN for them, only if they live in Mexico or Canada. But the documentation requirement gets a little bit more complicated. Again, we can help you with that situation, but only if they live in Mexico or Canada. If they live here in the United States with you, they should apply for an ITIN so that you can claim them as dependents or file as a married couple if that is the case. What documents am I going to need? Well, like I said before, you need to file a tax return. Besides that, your passport, an unexpired current passport, is the most important document for filing a tax return. If you have no passport, you will need a birth certificate and another form of photo identification. Again, the IRS is very particular about which forms of photo identification. And another important thing to note, SEBA can mail a copy of the passport that we certify to the IRS rather than the original. But if you don't have a passport, if we choose to use your birth certificate and your other form of photo ID, unfortunately, we have to mail the originals to the IRS. So that's why I'm always telling people that the passport is the most important document for your tax return. No passport, your first priority should be to go get a passport. All right. Another very common question, how can I make an appointment to get my taxes done or to get my ITIN application done? Visit our website, sebaphiladelphia.org, to book an appointment for your initial interview. This initial interview is the first step in the tax preparation process. Gonna see if there's any questions and move on to a final warning. Please do not fall for scams. Do not rely on a public notary, a specialist, or an immigration consultant. A notary is not a lawyer or an accountant, and they cannot certify copies of your passport for ITIN application purposes. There are a lot of scammers who take advantage of the difference in the meanings of the word notary in the United States and a notario in Latin America. In my country, in Mexico, a notario is a very important lawyer. There are only a handful of notarios in each area, and they are empowered to do certain very complex transactions. In the United States, a notary is just somebody who passed a 6-week online course and can certify that somebody signed something in front of them. Everybody who's watching this webinar could be a public notary before the end of the spring. A public notary in the United States is not a lawyer, is not an accountant, doesn't know the first thing about immigration services, doesn't know the first thing about taxes, doesn't know the first thing about ITINs. Do not fall victim to these scammers. Now, I'm not saying all notaries are scammers, but there are those out there that take advantage of this confusion to take your money and run. put your trust instead in nonprofit organizations, whether it's for taxes, ITINs, or for immigration matters. Philadelphia is blessed to have many excellent nonprofit organizations helping with taxes, helping with immigration matters, and then SEVA, we help with ITIN applications. So please do not fall for public notaries or specialists or immigration consultants. These are scammers. Do not give them your money. Remember, as I said at the top, SEVA will never ever charge you for any service. It is possible that you may owe money to the IRS, but we will never charge you for any service. I'm going to see if there's any questions in the Facebook comments. I hope there are some. If you are watching this on the recording, feel free to leave a comment or send us a message on Facebook, or go find us on our website at sevaphiladelphia.org. I hope that this information has been useful to you. I hope that if you need to apply for an ITIN, you will reach out to us as soon as possible so that we can make sure that you get the child tax credit. There's a lot of money that your family may be eligible for, up to $3,600 per child, not to mention the stimulus payment. So let's get these applications going. I hope this information has been useful to you. Thank you, and have a good evening.